Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll start. Welcome to this IDF webinar on the world dairy situation, and this time with focus on Chile. This webinar is designed to showcase the comprehensive information available for you in our report, along with key highlights from the latest edition, and I believe some sneak peeks into the future. And today we will also provide you with some unique insights into the specific dairy situation in Chile, which can be useful if this is a market you're looking at. And it should, of course, get you ready for the upcoming World Dairy Summit in October, which this year will be held in, yes, Santiago. I am Helle Huseby. I'm chair of the Standing Committee of Dairy Policies and Economics in IDF, and I will be your moderator today for this webinar. In my daytime job, I'm head of trade policy at the largest Norwegian dairy company called TINE. And it's a really great pleasure for me to moderate today. And we have three excellent speakers with us who will be sharing their knowledge with us. And we will use the chat function, as usual, for your questions. So please feel free to ask questions to our speakers. However, I will save your questions for the Q&A session after the three talks are delivered. I think that's better. And I have to say that it will help me tremendously if you write who your question is for, or if it's for the whole panel. The last weeks and months have given us a dramatic change in the geopolitical situation and increased tensions. This new geopolitical context involves understanding of both the large perspectives and the different parts in a historically complex time. And I believe we must be prepared for the unexpected. And ladies and gentlemen, in the middle of all this, something is stable, as the IDF World Dairy Situation Report has been published annually since 1989. And it has become an essential tool for those in the global dairy chain. The report gives you detailed trends for production, consumption, and trade for dairy worldwide. And this is for you to better understand where the dairy markets are going. The previous report showed that dairy trade was slowing down, and also that production in traditional dairy countries were coming down in contrast to the rest of the world. To find out the drivers behind this and to explain what we think is happening now, we have invited Jean-Marc Chaumet from France for a deep dive into the findings of the report. Jean-Marc is the economy director of the French dairy interbranch organization CNIEL. And Jean-Marc previously spent 12 years at the French Livestock Institute as a project manager, focusing on international economic studies and market analysis. Prior to this, he worked at the French embassy in China. Jean-Marc lives in Paris, and he is a long-standing member of the IDF Standing Committee of Dairy Policies and Economics, and he will provide us now with an overview of the latest World Dairy Situation Report. So please, Jean-Marc, looking forward to listen.
Thank you, Helle, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar, and thank you to IDF. So I'm going to, I think, share my screen. Let me take. Oops. Sorry, just 1 minute. I still have problem with no, I'm sorry. Just find it there. Play. Here it is, I think. Can you see it?
Something is happening and it's coming, yes.
Okay.
You just need to put it in presentation mode, I believe.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Because I need this. I'm sorry for the delay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I have problems with this. Yeah. Voilà.
We can still see it.
Okay, I think you see it now. Can you see it now?
We can see it. It's just not in presentation mode, but we still see.
Yeah, it's coming. It's very slow. Okay, I think you can see it now. Right?
We can see it, but we can also see all your slides on the side, but it's not a problem. We see it.
Oh. Okay, strange. I'm sorry about this and this. You only see me?
No, we see you and we see your slides. It's fine.
Okay, so good, perfect. You see my slide in full mode?
No, but we see it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cannot see anything from my point of view. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to present to you some very highlights of the World Dairy Situation Report. And yes, Helle, you were right, saying that we can see a shift in milk production in global market. But first, let's take a step back and try to see the global milk production. And after we will see where this milk production comes from. If you see this on this slide, milk production has been an increasing trend since I think since the 1990s, and every year milk production has been increasing. And in 2023, milk production globally has reached a new record with 964 billion kilograms. And as you can see on this graph, we can see that cow milk, buffalo milk share the biggest share in the milk production worldwide. And if we look into a little bit more details, we can see that buffalo milk has been on an increasing trend and even faster than cow milk. Buffalo milk for the past 8 years has been growing twice faster than cow milk, and now accounts for 13% of global milk globally. It was only 10% 8 or 9 years ago. So if we look at...
Can I stop you? Because your slides are not moving, so we only see your front page.
Okay, you don't see anything now? No?
Only see the first.
Yeah, can you share the screen, please? I'm sorry, because for me it's moving. No, if you can share it. I'm very sorry about this, but I don't know. I have to...
Perfect. Now we see.
Now you see? Okay. Oh. Okay. So I was saying, I'm sorry, let's take back, that buffalo milk has been growing twice faster as cow milk in the past 8 to 10 years, and 4% around for buffalo milk, but around 2%. And that's one of the main driver of global increase of global milk globally. There is a second driver also in milk production, and it is milk production in the milk deficient regions. Could be in buffalo milk as well as in cow milk. Milk deficient region, meaning Asia in particular, but not only, also other emerging markets. And if we go to the next slide, and with this last driver next slide again. Yes, and with this last driver in mind, if we take a closer look at the geographical breakdown of cow milk production, it appears clearly that there is a shift growth, an increasing gap between the growth of, well, let's call them the traditional milk producing countries and exporting countries, and the emerging dairy countries region, which strive to achieve self-sufficiency and also reduce reliance on imports.
Daniel, I think you had some challenges with your sharing now. Okay,
that's good. So if you look at this graph, you can see that the medium-term growth in North America, Europe, Oceania, and South America is below the global average growth rate of milk production from 2015 to 2023, 2024, which is 2%, as I said before. So we have 1 plus 1.2% in North America, only 0.5% in EU 27, and kind of stability in South America, and even a decrease in Oceania. So the traditional milk production or milk exporting regions growth rate is lower than the average in the world. And on the other hand, Asia in particular, and to a lesser extent, Africa, shows growth strong in milk production. Production in these two regions is driven by local demand growth as well as favorable milk prices. Just one detail, when I talk about Asia here, it goes from Southeast Asia all the way across to Turkey, encompassing India. And for the last 8 years, Asia has been the leading growth region with an annual growth rate of 4.8%. And Asia is responsible for 2/3 of the global increase in cow's milk production over the last 10 years. Asia now accounts, as you can see on the pizza chart on the right, accounts for 36% of world cow's milk production compared to 26% in 2010. On the next slide, as I said, the bulk of the supply growth has taken place in Asia for the last 10 years. It was again the case in 2023, and the new report, which will be released in October, will show that it was again the case last year in 2024. And the most impressive growth we're seeing in Asia, especially in India, due to an increase in livestock productivity. India accounted for 2/3 of the increase in Asian milk volume. But we also can talk about Bangladesh, China, and Pakistan. That's the countries in dark blue on the map. But aside from Asia, we can see that milk production growth in other regions were very limited one more time. Africa, which is the other key milk deficient regions, added limited volumes. Milk production grew by 1.6%, which is lower than the midterm growth. And US and EU production have been leveling off since 2021. In the USA, milk production has been hovering around 100 million, 102 million tons since 2021. In the EU, milk production has been growing very slowly since 2020. Another factor in Europe, besides, I would say, skyrocketing costs that we have seen over the past few years, and also adverse weather, there is also in Europe another issue, which is environmental policies that are putting pressure on dairy farming in numerous countries. In Oceania, milk production reached a peak in 2018, but since then, shows a decreasing trend, both in Australia and New Zealand, with 1 year up, 1 year down, but on average, more a decrease. And in South America, production was stable in line with the medium-term average. So on the next slide, we can see that, as I said, that the milk production growth in traditional producing regions is lower than in emerging countries. And this can be seen through the length of milk deliveries, because only a part of the milk produced globally is delivered to dairy companies to be processed into dairy product. And the share of milk delivered to dairies can be high in industrialized countries and can be low in emerging countries, where a big share of the milk is sold through informal markets. As you can see on the map on the pizza chart, EU accounts for 31% of milk deliveries and USA 22%. I have to say that India does not appear on the chart. India is not taken into account in this chart. Milk deliveries in India is less than 50%, but the accurate number is difficult to know, and so we don't add India into this chart, even if milk deliveries in India are increasing year after year. On a global scale, we can see that production increased more rapidly than deliveries. As I said, milk production medium-term growth rate was 2%, as I said before, but milk collection is only half of that. Milk collection is only 1%. So milk production is growing twice faster as milk deliveries. We can see that milk deliveries increased from 2016 to 2020 and have been stabilizing since then. A small increase in 2021, a small decrease in 2022, a rebound in 2023, but far from the 2% increase in milk production. So it means that country with a small share of milk deliveries witness the biggest growth in milk production. So again, we can see this is another way to see the shift between traditional milk producing countries where deliveries are above 90 or 95%, and I would say emerging countries where the share of deliveries is smaller, but where production increased way faster. So on the next slide, and this is a consequence. A consequence of what of the small deliveries, and what Helle said at the beginning is that a small increase in deliveries and processing of milk means limited trade. I mean, milk production in the major exporting countries was not increasing or even down, so trade has also been limited since 2021. And on the top of that, demand worldwide was also kind of sluggish because in part of inflation in 2021, 2022, and part of 2023. For example, China produced more milk and managed to meet its domestic demand and kind of a high stock, so there was low level import since 2022. And we can see that if butter production was up, we will see in the next slide. Well, trade decreased slightly. Countries, no, just still the same slide with trade. I'm sorry, I've not changed. Countries like India, Australia, Argentina showed a decline in export of butter. And for other commodities, as you can see on the left side, we can see that there was a small increase in export. Global cheese trade has been growing well below average, and most of the growth came from only New Zealand and the EU. Skim milk powder export was 1 year up, 1 year down, but still not a big increase. And for WMP, whole milk powder in 2022, trade was heavily impacted by a drop in demand from China. It was again the case in 2023 and 2024, even if weak demand from China was offset by other country imports. But in fact, as you can see on the chart on the left, the trade was has been very limited since 2021. Keep in mind that most of the global milk pool is consumed locally and without crossing border. I mean, when we talk about export, we talk about only 9 to 10% of the milk produced in the world. Export constitute a very small proportion of the milk produced in the world, and so the share of the milk which cross borders, in fact, is only 9 to 10% of the milk which is produced in the whole world. On the right side, on the right graph, you can see the share of the different regions in export, and you can see that EU 27 still the biggest exporter of dairy product in the world in milk equivalent basis, even if the share is not consistent, and New Zealand is number 2. But what is really needs to be pointed out is that the share of the USA, the share of the US in global milk export has been increasing since 10 years, and now is around 15%, and it was 12% a few years back. And the share of the milk, which is of the American milk, of the US milk, which is exported, also has been increasing a lot. So it means that the US has keeps having a bigger share on the world market, and this is something that we have to follow in the next years. So we talked about production and export, and now if we talk about consumption on the next slide, is that in the past few years, consumption has been affected by different factors. In fact, there was COVID-19 in 2020, but also inflation since in 2021 and 2022 and part of 2023. And you can see that between 2021 and 2022, milk consumption worldwide has been steady, has not increased. And this is also, for the most part because of inflation. But we can see that now that inflation has been slowing down, there was an increase in consumption in 2023, and we can see that now the milk consumption per capita is very close to 120 kilogram per capita in the world. But we have, this is an average for per capita in the whole world. But of course, per capita consumption is very different from one region to another in the world. It's around 45 kilogram in Africa to more than 280 in Europe. And one thing is to notice is that for the first time in 2023, per capita consumption in Asia was above 100 kilogram per capita, is 102 kilogram per capita in 2023. So we can see that Asia, again, is the region where milk production has been growing the fastest, but also where milk consumption is growing also the fastest, because most of the milk produced in Asia stays in Asia to be consumed. Another thing to note is on the pizza chart on the right is that we estimate that half of the global milk production is not processed through industrial channels and relies on informal sector. About half of the milk is delivered to processors, and this half of the milk which is delivered to processors is consumed in the form of fresh product, but also butter and cheese. On the next slide, we're going to take a closer look on the processing side, and we can see the trend in dairy product output. And we can see that what is driving the dairy product output is cheese and butter for the past years. Butter production has been increasing at a rate of more than 2.3% per year during the last 8 to 10 years. So it means that a total of 20% in 8 years. So meaning that there are over 2 million tons of butter on the market, more on the market, 2 million more tons on the market between 2015 and 2023. And last year, and in 2023, the growth was in line with the previous years. And production of butter is largely dominated by India, of course, which alone account for half of the world's fat production. But production of butter is driven by an increasing demand worldwide for dairy fats, not only in India. Since 2014, the consumption of butter worldwide has been increasing a lot in Asia, but also in other parts of the world, and even in traditional, I would say, milk dairy production countries like USA or Europe. Cheese production has also increased at a fast pace in the last 10 years, more than 2% per year, meaning that 4 million tons of cheese were added in 8 years to reach a total of 24 million ton of cheese. So that's the two main products that I would say drive the milk dairy product output. And we also have liquid milk, which has rebounded in the last few years, but liquid milk was on a downward trend in many countries like Europe or USA for many years, but it has rebounded in the last few years in countries like India, Russia, China, or even Turkey. And we can see in the next slide that the production trend for other production like skim milk powder or whole milk powder is totally different than the ones for butter and cheese. Production of skim milk powder has been increasing very slowly over the past few years, less than 1% per year. We have a less and less demand for skim milk powder. And whole milk powder production increased a little bit, but after dropped. So this totally two different trends for WMP, SMP, and for butter and cheese. And whey powder is kind of the same. Whey powder is less and less produced because it is more and more replaced by other products like whey concentrate protein. So less demand also for just whey powder. If we switch to the next slide, we can see the prices, and I would like to get across two main ideas for prices. First, if you look at this graph, you can see that in 2022, so 3 years ago, the FAO Dairy Price Index, this is a black line, reached a very high levels, setting an historical record for dairy prices in the international markets. Of course, with consequences on consumption and trade, as I said before. But, and this is the second idea, prices are also showing a strong volatility, which is still going on now in 2025, as you can see on the graph. Dairy prices were already on the rise in 2021, and there was a massive spike and then a massive retreat. And this for all the product. Only cheese's price started to decrease later in 2023, and this drop of price was due to a decline in import. But prices reached a bottom in mid-2023, and I was talking about volatility, and you can see that starting for 2023, international prices trended upward again, especially for butter, but also for cheese and WMP. Only SMP prices have not rallied. As I said before, demand for SMP is not as strong as before. And so production also is not as strong, and production and demand kind of seem to be equal now. And so the prices are flat, have been flat for like almost 2 years and 2 years and a half now. On the contrary to other products which prices have been increasing a lot. And so with all of this, what are the trends, the short-term trends of the dairy market? Well, on the next slide. And we can see that, well, increase in global milk supplies from key production regions is not up here because we don't have still the data of May, not all the data of May and June, but what we can see in the US production is rebounded a little bit for the first 4 months of 2025. We can see also a rebound in Argentina. We can see an increase in South America for the most part. Increase in New Zealand, but decrease in Australia. But what we can see is more rising supply in many countries, except maybe Europe so far and Australia. So the question mark will not be on rising supply on the short-term trend. It will be more on demand. Are we going to have this year a rising supply, but a weakened demand? Because I would say that many experts project that production globally will increase in Q2, will increase also in Q3, maybe 1.4, 1.5%. In the US for sure. Maybe production will rebound a little bit in the EU, but that's not for sure. For sure, South America's production is going to increase. So we have bullish supply signals. But on the other hand, we have ongoing trade tensions that are going to affect global trade and also consumer sentiment. And weakened demand, especially in inflation-impacted economies, is going to weigh a lot on the prices. So what we can expect for this year, considering that consumer confidence in the USA is not very high, that China has struggles in an economic side, and that we have a declining sales of data and restaurant and in many regions, we can say that the rising supply will meet maybe weakened demand, and so we're going to see some downside in the second half of 2025. We're getting the prices, maybe not a sharp slowdown, but a decrease from the multi-year highs that we have known so far. So from a short term, we can see rising supplies and weakened demand. And this will be my last slide, the next slide. On the long term, we kind of see the opposite, rising demand, but uncertain supply. I'm going to explain that. all the prospective studies agree that dairy consumption is expected to increase in the coming decades. And you can see here the data on the left from OECD data that show that fresh dairy products are going to be, and butter are going to be among the most, the product with the biggest increase in demand, more than poultry meat, more than sugar, more than fish, and you have cheese also, which is in a very good place. So we can see that in the coming decade, the prospective OECD, but we can also share other data from other perspectives, agree that dairy consumption is expected to increase. The uncertainty comes from production. As we have seen in the beginning of the presentation, milk production in traditional exporting countries is not increasing fast. Oceania is not likely to increase its production over the next 10 years. There's a big question mark over the production in the EU, linked with environmental regulations. The US is said to have some leeway for increased production, but milk output has been stable for the past 3 years. Production growth in South America has not been an upward trend over the past few years, but might increase a little bit. But the question is, will the increase in the US and maybe South America will offset the probable decline in Oceania in the EU? That's the lingering question that we have so far. So, in fact, all the facts point at a gap between supply and demand in the next decade. We're going to see a rising demand in Southeast Asia, maybe in China also, but less, in Africa also, and a lot of question marks regarding production in the next decade, especially production in the exporting countries, because most of the increase in demand is going to take place in production with very little on production, milk production, and the production will not increase as fast as demand in Southeast Asia or in Africa. So this demand has to be complete by export, and the traditional exporting countries, as I said, have not a lot of leeway to increase their production. So that's a question for the future: rising demand and uncertain supply. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marc, for giving us these insights. That's a comprehensive deck you have there and a lot to follow on. As mentioned earlier to all of you, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. If you have questions for Jean-Marc to his presentation, and I will take them later. Because now we're going to have a closer look at Chile. Chile is an exciting dairy country and also a country to look at for those interested in trade, I believe. As far as I've been told from our friends in Chile, it's an exciting dairy country, yes, and their strategy has been to develop its export through the free trade agreements that they have. And currently Chile has 33 free trade agreements in force and actually covering 65 economies around the world. And 93% of Chile's exports are shipped to their partners that they have through their FTAs. And if I'm right, I think that their key upcoming milestones are progress towards a free trade agreement with India. Further negotiation rounds are pending at the moment, but that one is one to follow. And also modernization of these trade agreements that you have with South Korea and the European Union is also ongoing, I believe. So most of Chile's free trade agreements include dairy products, and that's why I said that it's a country to look up for when it comes to those interested in trade. And this allows the dairy sector to export dairy products, including some of the traditional Chilean products, such as the dulce de leche. And now we're going to hear more about the sector. Caterina, Juri from Consorcio de Lechero is going to give us some information about your sector. You are both information and R&D director at the Consorcio, and she's also an agricultural, now I can hardly speak here, sorry, engineer from the University of Chile with diplomas in marketing, in customer intelligence, and data analysis in business intelligence. And she has experience in marketing, advertising, commercialization of agricultural products, information generation, and data analysis. Very impressive, Caterina. And she's also a member of the IDF Standing Committee Dairy Policies, and now she's going to give us this overview. Please, Caterina.
Thank you, Helle. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm going to share my screen now. You can see?
Yes, it's good.
Okay. Today I'll give you a brief overview of the Chilean dairy market in 2024, including key trends, the structural change, and opportunities for growth. And let's start by looking at the total milk deliveries in the country. I think maybe Daniel, can you share the presentation because it's something happened.
We can see it, it's just that it's not in presentation mode. But Daniel, maybe you can share that, it's easier. Thank you.
Can you see now?
Yes. Okay. Looks good now.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 2024, the total milk reached 2,233,000,000 liters. This represents an increase of 3% compared to the previous year. The Los Lagos region contribute approximately 930 million liters, and Los Ríos deliver around 806 million liters. The peak production occurs between September and December, following our seasonal patterns. And now, take a look how these deliveries have evolved over time in this graph. So this graph shows the evolution of milk deliveries over the past decade. Over the last 10 years, delivery increased by 5.3% when corrected for milk solid. While there have been some fluctuations, the long-term trend shows steady growth. And now I talk about the production systems behind this number. In Chile, milk production is highly concentrated in the south. The regions of Los Lagos, Los Ríos, and La Araucanía account for approximately 86% of total milk deliveries. And in these areas, production is mainly pasture-based, taking advantage of favorable weather and natural resources. The next slide, please. In contrast, the central regions, including Metropolitana, Ñuble, and Biobío, account for the remaining 14% of deliveries, and here the production systems are predominantly confined due to different climate and land use patterns. Now, take a look at the structure of the dairy farming sector. In this picture, you can see real dairy Chilean farmers. Okay, next. In 2023, there were 2,370 dairy farmers supplying the formal industry. And this number has been decreasing over time. In 2022, there were 2,411. And this reflects a process of consolidation and some challenges in rural reality. And we estimate the number of dairy cows around 435,000. Yeah, please. The small-scale producer who deliver less than 500,000 liters per year represent 51% of all producers, but only contribute 10% of the milk. Medium-scale producers delivering between 500,000 and 1.5 million liters represent 14% of producers and contribute 30% of the milk. And the large-scale producer, those delivering more than 1.5 million liters, make up 35% of producers, but contribute 77% of the total milk. This shows the efficiency and scale of large farms compared to smaller ones. Now, let's move to the processing industry. Chile's main dairy processors include Colún, Soprole, Nestlé, Watt, Villaya Surlat, and Lactalis. And Colún leads the sector in milk deliveries and processing volume. As with production, most industrial plants are located in the southern regions. Okay, let's see what dairy products are most commonly made. In 2024, fluid milk production reached approximately 505 million liters, a 4.1% increase from last year. And yogurt production reached 222 million liters, and cheese production exceeded 121 million kilograms. Powder milk had a significant increase of 16%, reaching almost 73 million kilograms. Butter production also grew by more than 7%. Okay, next please. Let's look at producer prices. The average milk price in 2024 is 47 US cents per liter after a peak in 2023. The price declined slightly, but it still remains higher than the level seen in 2021. Yeah. Now we can see about the consumption. Yeah, apparent per capita consumption is estimated at 139 liters of milk equivalent per year, and this includes both domestic production and net import. The figure is still below the levels recommended by the FAO. Although dairy is an important part of the Chilean diet, there is a potential to increase consumption, especially through value-added and culturally adapted products. Okay, next please. About dairy export in 2024, Chile's dairy export reached $261 million, an increase of 16% compared to the previous year. The total export volume reached 380 million liters of milk equivalent, up 38%. And the main export destinations were the United States and Mexico. Okay. Dairy imports. Imports total $474 million US, which is 3.7% lower than the last year. And the top origins were Argentina, the United States, Germany, Mexico, and the Netherlands. Cheese accounts for 63% of the total import value, and while imports remain significant, the decline this year may open opportunities for local production, especially in cheese. Chile in the global dairy context. Chile is a net importer of dairy, but shows the strength in selective export. The country benefits from high sanitary standards and stable institutions, which are valued by international partners. There is a potential to grow in Latin America markets and its global segment. Collaboration with international platforms is increasing, with a focus on improving productivity and profitability. The next, please. About sustainability and future directions, Chilean dairy farms are adopting better environmental practices, focus on water use, waste management, and carbon footprint. Animal welfare certification are expanded. Public-private initiatives certify sustainable practice along the dairy chain. There is a program called Chile Origen Consciente, and data and indicators are key to monitor progress. Related with the last point is the next. To enhance the quality of data in the dairy sector, we are working at the Dairy Information Center called CIL, Centro de Información Láctea, and we are currently conducting a comprehensive sector diagnosis for improving the data in the Chilean dairy sector. The next, please. Thank you, and I hope you came to Chile for the next summit.
Thank you so much, Caterina, for sharing this overview with us. Very informative. I'm really looking forward to come to Chile in October and hopefully see some of your dairy sector. Our last speaker today is Octavio Oltra. Octavio, you're the general manager at the Consorcio de Lechero, and you're also the IDF National Secretary in Chile. Octavio is a veterinarian from the University of Chile, but he also has a PhD in food science from Queen's University, Belfast in the United Kingdom. And Octavio, you will show us why we should all mark our calendars for October 20 to 25 and head for Chile.
Yes, thank you, Helle. Yeah, that's my idea. That is my mission, to invite you everyone to Chile. I think I can share a screen. Yes, I can do it now. All right. It's a very short presentation to invite you to Chile. Well, as you know very well, this is our sponsor. Obviously, I have to show you to the sponsor. We have a plenty of sponsor, yes, that are going to be present in Chile. But as you know, in the next October, we're gonna be the World Dairy Summit in Chile, in Santiago. That is gonna start the 17 and 19 with the business meeting of IDF, but the Dairy Summit is gonna be held between 20 and 23rd in an Intercontinental Hotel, and between 23rd and 25th, we're gonna have the technical tours which I'm going to talk a little more about those ones now. Well, the hotel is in the very center of the business area in Santiago. There's also there are different hotels and other venues and restaurants there. That means gonna be the perfect place to have or World Dairy Summit in Santiago. The general program considered three main topics: sustainable food system, AI as a tool for sustainable future, trying to find out how the AI is using now in the dairy sector, and dairy as food security pillar in developing countries, which is very important in Latin America, specific with the story that we have in Chile about. The program is already available in the website. It's almost complete. You can find, this is the broad view of the program, but you can find all the talks and the specific subjects like you want to use, we're going to present during this summit. The idea is to have, we're going to start with the welcome reception on Sunday afternoon. And Tuesday, I'm going to just give you some highlights. Tuesday, we're going to be more dedicated in dairy farming and finishing with the farmer's dinner. We're going to take this opportunity to give a second, more deeply side of the dairy policies, marketing, and also the IMP trophies and innovation award, and also looking for the developing of the new technologies for processing. Wednesday is more sustainability in the three main pillars, and Thursdays we're going to focus and standard and food safety and regulation. Obviously, the big event gala dinner is going to be in Wednesday, and from Thursday afternoon, we're going to start with the technical tours. The welcome reception is going to be in the Viña and the Vineyard Conchi Toro. It's a very well-known wine around the world and a very ancient vineyard in Chile, very close to the Santiago and very close to the venue when the IDF Summit is going to be held. For Farmers Dinner, we're going to be a big traditional house very in the center of Santiago. And for the gala dinner, we choose a venue very close to Santiago, very close to the Andes as well. Like we're going to have a very nice event as we always is for gala dinners in the World Dairy Summit. For the technical tours, we're going to have 5 technical tours. Two technical tours is going to go to the south of Chile, specifically in the areas where the dairy farming is more big. That's what Caterina mentioned. 85% of all the milk in Chile come from the south, pasture-based system with a very nice scenery around. This is gonna these tours considering the flight tickets and also 2 nights in hotels plus all the meals like are involved. We have another technical tour in the center of the country focused in robotic farming. We're going to visit one of the biggest robotic farming in the world with 5,000 cows in robotic systems, and one farm where this is becoming robotic. You can see the transition there. That's the idea. And we're going to have 2 more tours, one around Santiago, one for half day on Thursday, focusing innovation, and one visiting farmings around Santiago, and also having a dinner in one vineyard around Santiago in Casablanca Valley. We are very close to finish the early bird in the 30th of June. I invite you to use the discount like it's in the early bird, and also we are giving some support for visa requirements. There are not many countries in the world that need visa to come to Chile, but in the case that you need, we can support you with that. Also, we are supporting the delegation. There's many delegations like always are coming to Chile. We are supporting them. And also you have in the website alternative touristic packages if you want to stay more time in Chile, which I really recommend. And also we're gonna have the FIL-IDF assembly during the week on Thursday with the idea to include more Latin American present in the summit. welcome to Chile. I really looking forward. Have a very nice and very big World Dairy Summit, and we are preparing some surprises there for you. And I'm gonna finish just putting you some video to give you a little more of what's Chile. It's a very short video, but you can see what you gonna expect you there.
Welcome to Chile, a vibrant and diverse land of extremes. A country that charms and captivates visitors with unrivaled landscapes and the spirit of its people. Chile spans more than 8,000 kilometers from its northernmost region to Antarctica in the south. Continental Chile is bordered on one side by the Andes Mountains and by the vast Pacific Ocean on the other. Close to 18 million people live in Chile. Here, indigenous cultures have blended with those brought from other lands. Rural and urban, northern and southern. Continental and island traditions also thrive throughout Chile's varied climates and geographical conditions. And this is our dairy sector. In this landscape of contrasts, where different cultures converge, Chile's dairy industry was born, driven by the work of farming families who, by innovating and incorporating technologies over generations, have developed today's production systems. The dairy industry is organized through cooperatives and companies. They offer high-quality dairy products to the people in Chile and other markets. Today, we look to the future with the conviction that sustainability is the way to continue contributing to nurture people and to the development of our communities. We invite you to the IDF World Dairy Summit 2025, October 20 to 25, where you can meet with the global dairy sector, learn about the world outlook, new technologies, and share the challenge of nourishing future generations with dairy. IDF World Dairy Summit 2025, Santiago, Chile. Nourishing a sustainable world.
Thank you.
And thank you, Octavio. That looks like an amazing event coming up. We are looking forward. Thanks a lot for presenting it. I know that time is running fast, but we had a few technical issues, so I will still allow for a couple of questions, even though we're just a few minutes left. And I see, Caterina, that you have answered one of the questions that came in on the chat on what is the dominant form of milk processor in Chile. But I can see that there's also one more for you, asking, when talking about cheese for consumption, is it mainly semi-hard cheeses like Gouda, cheddar, or is it other types like fresh, soft, etc.?
Yes, semi-hard cheeses like Gouda are the primary cheese consumed in Chile. However, fresh and soft varieties are also popular and show rising trends.
Thanks a lot. And while I'm asking you, maybe I'm also allowed to ask you one. What are the main projections, in your view, for the dairy sector in Chile in 2025 that we are at the moment?
Regarding production, we are doing well so far, but it will be important to see how things develop during the spring, because we have the peak in this time. And as for consumption, it is expected to remain stable with a slight increase. And exports are performing positively and are projected to continue growing, provided that we maintain the current production level. And for prices are expected to stay stable during the year.
Thanks a lot. Jean-Marc, can you put your camera on? I also kind of wanted to ask you one if you're there. Or have we lost him? No, he's there, coming in. Thanks. I also wanted to ask you, because we're trying to look a bit forward. Can I ask you, Jean-Marc, in your view, in the next decade, would the demand for dairy fats, I mean, you showed us that the demand for dairy fats have grown quite a lot. Do you think that will continue? And what about the demand for protein going forward?
Yes, we think that the demand for fat will continue. As I said, the demand for fat has started to increase in 2014 when there was some scientific publication that proved that dairy fat was not as bad for health as it was thought before. So dairy fat the consumption of dairy fats started to increase in 2014 and still on the rise, still on the increase now. And we think it's going to increase again, and especially in Asia, Southeast Asia, but also in Europe or in countries like the US, and that's why we see some prices of butter extremely high right now. Is that production is not following the consumption. Consumption is still increasing, and for dairy protein, we think that now dairy protein, which were not valued very well so far, and the value of protein, of milk protein, but also whey protein, are going to increase, especially whey protein and whey protein concentrate. We can see now a demand in a product with a lot of protein inside. Yogurt or beverages that is starting to increase in the US and also in Europe and also in other parts of the world like China. And so we anticipate also a higher demand for protein in the next few years.
Okay, thank you. So we have to follow them to see if it's happening.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I cannot see more questions on the chat, and because we're already a couple of minutes over time, I think I would like to use the opportunity to thank our speakers for the great contributions today. And before concluding the webinar, I would also briefly like to mention the IDF publications, because apart from the World Dairy Situation Report presented here today by Jean-Marc, IDF is publishing a wide variety of topics in relation to the entire dairy chain. And I encourage you to visit the site to have a look, be many more than you thought. To complement the World Dairy Situation, we also produce a report called Global Marketing Trends. That one we only do every 2-3 years. The World Dairy Situation is, as I mentioned, every year. But this publication on the marketing trends focus on understanding the changes in the dairy consumption in the world. And the latest edition of this one was actually published late April. So it's a very recent one. So I encourage you all to have a look at the website and have a look at this one. I guess the only thing left for me to say is many thanks to all of you for attending the webinar, and it's been recorded. So in case you want to revisit or you know somebody else who would like to watch it, it is possible. So thank you all for attending.